From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Good evening and welcome to the Library of Congress for this evening's opening reading by the new Poet Laureate of the United States, Juan Felipe Herrera. Since this is the last time that I will be both choosing and introducing a Poet Laureate, let me begin by expressing my and the library's, and I think many of you here's, admiration for the inspiring and energetic way that Rob Casper has been leading the library's Poetry and Literature Center. The Poet Laureateship is chosen by the Library of Congress and is the only literary prize in the United States established statutorily. Over the course of my own 28 years as Librarian of Congress, I've appointed 19 of the Poet Laureates, each with his or her own voice and opinion and vision, and together they have shown me at least how essential poetry is to our nation. Getting to know them has been one of the real joys of my position. I've seen how committed they are to the responsibility of this office of laureateship and how much they support this institution as well, with its charge to further the progress of knowledge and creativity for the benefit of the American people. Tonight we celebrate our newest Poet Laureate, Juan Felipe Herrera, a man who seemed destined for this position and whose strengths complement those who preceded him. Herrera is the second U.S. laureate also to have served as Poet Laureate in his home state. He was California's Poet Laureate for the past 3 years. There he launched I Promise Joanna, actually, which is about a bullying awareness problem, and another one called The Most Incredible and Biggest Poem on Unity in the World. It was a poem of almost 10,000 words in length, with contributions by Californians of all ages. Herrera is bringing the same energy and a similar idea to his new role in launching La Casa de Colores, the House of Color, on the library's website in the next few days. He will put out a call for contributions to an epic poem about the American experience, and I hope many of you will be contributors. My first experience with Juan Felipe Herrera was at the gala for the 213 National Book Festival. There he read his poem, Half Mexican, a kind of alchemy of words that only the best poets can create. The poem ends by celebrating the complexity of identity and what we must all do to continue to find our sense of who we are ourselves. I'm quoting him now. He said, "All this becomes your lifelong project. That is, you are Mexican, one half Mexican, the other half Mexican, then the half against itself, the other half." I did not know that Herrera wrote Half Mexican in one sitting, or that he often writes poems at a moment's notice. His great body of work spans more than 4 decades. Much of this work extends the lineage of Walt Whitman, Carl Sandburg, Allen Ginsberg. One needs only to read Herrera's poems, Blood on the Wheel, or 187 Reasons Mexicans Can't Cross the Border, to see how he reimagined the Liszt poem with a kind of incantational power, because his is the poetry of freedom, the freedom to experiment beautifully, to speak a wealth of different registers, and in English and Spanish, and with a sense of joy and reverence throughout. He is able to imagine, cover what, rather using the imagination to cover whatever ground it needs to. As a National Book Festival, when he read from his book, Senegal Taxi, with a cast of voices that included such figures as the village ant, the Kalashnikov AK-47, and television box in the East Village hut. Comparisons are the core of Herrera's poetry and an appeal to counter the injustices that divide and beset us all in so many ways. As Herrera writes in Let Me Tell You What a Poem Brings, a poem is, and I quote him, a way to attain a life without boundaries. So I should like to think of the Poet Laureateships that I've selected over these years, how they have validated their signature projects, which they themselves invented. It's not a requirement, but fortunately the laureates have mostly chosen to have an important project. Robert Pinsky's favorite poem project, gathering in favorite poems from ordinary people around the country, all over America. Robert Pinsky's favorite poems projects that I mentioned, Billy Collins' Poetry 180, which is poems for high schools, still widely used today. Kay Ryan bringing something like the voice of Emily Dickinson into community colleges in our project with the beautiful name of Poetry for the Mind's Joy. Community colleges don't have professors of poetry, but Kay Ryan assumed that role. Then you had Ted Kuzer of Nebraska writing a newspaper column about poetry for small and medium-sized communities all over the country. Then you had, that was called American Life in Poetry, and most recently, Natasha Trethewey's project, Where Poetry Lives, taking poetry a variety of places around the country, ranging from a juvenile prison to an Alzheimer's home, together with Jeffrey Brown for a memorable series of NewsHour segments on national public television. Now, I can think of laureates that I have selected doing these wonderful things. Juan Felipe Herrera will add to the ways we can and should enjoy and champion poetry throughout this country. Herrera is an American original, and his poems will delight and challenge generations to come. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the 21st Poet Laureate of the United States, the Poet Laureate Consultant in Poetry, Juan Felipe Herrera.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Dr. Billington. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, thank you. Thanks for coming over. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. Casa de Colores. Muchas gracias, everybody. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Billington. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. I think that was the poem. I think that was the poem. Thank you so much. The poem was short. It was beautiful. And it was full of love. That's what made it beautiful. And that's why it was short, too, because, love is so powerful. Thank you, Dr. Billington. Thank you, Dr. Billington. I really appreciate your invitation. And I appreciate all the things you have given me. In one short sentence, are you willing to serve as a Poet Laureate of the United States? Thank you so much. And I said yes. I said yes. I said I'm honored. I said I'm humbled. And then you said, any questions? And I said, no, I think that's it right there. I think that's it right there. It was such a big moment. I had to kind of hold on to the table at the University of Washington. I was there at the moment. Beautiful place, a beautiful department, American Ethnic Studies. And I was holding on to the table, and it really took time for me to, it took me a long time. It took me a long time. I think tonight is when I'm really feeling the beauty and the obligations and the responsibility and the vision rolling out through your own eyes, through the people I'm meeting at this very moment. Dr. Billington, thank you so much. A big hand for Dr. Billington. Muchas gracias. That's right. That's right. That's right. Thank you. And Rob Casper and the whole staff at the Poetry Center, they've been working day in, day out, minute by minute, lining up all the poems. I said, Rob, I never do this. This is what are you doing? You're lining everything up. Everything's in sequence. Everything makes sense. What am I going to do? And Rob, my son, too, he said, you better put a playlist together, Juan. You need to have a playlist. I go, all right, okay. Playlist, okay. I have playlist poetry. And I want to thank Rob Casper and the whole department of Poetry Department, Literature Department. Muchas gracias. A big hand. Rob says, why don't you read this poem? I go, Rob, you got to be kidding. I'm not going to read that poem. He said, I have to read gentlemanly poems. And he says, go ahead, come on. Really, Rob Casper is a great visionary. And the department and Anya and Matt fall right in. And that's what it takes. It takes a group with a united vision. And when we say poetry, it's really the vision for all voices. That's really what it means. People ask me, what is poetry, Juan Felipe? I go, it is freedom. That's what it is. It's what everybody has. And when you use your own voice, your own personal voice, freely, the real you, then we're all united. Thank you. I want to thank my wife, Margarita, who's right here. She's right there. Day in, day out, she works, she writes poetry. And I just kind of take over the entire house with my stuff. I really do. And she deserves her own space and place. and she makes room for me. She doesn't have to. She doesn't have to. And she's a poet, and she writes, and she's a performance artist. And tonight, I want to give her the total, full 100,000% credit for all she does. And she's made out of love. And my whole familia that's here, my whole family that's here, they drove, and my friends that are here who drove many miles, who's been with me all along, and who supported me all along, and who have become who they are all along, beautiful human beings. I want to thank them too. Muchas gracias, dear family. Please stand up. Come here, it's the time to stand up. Please stand up. Stand up. So we're all in this together. We're all in this together. And I have a very beautiful, special guest with us tonight. We have a very beautiful, special guest with us tonight. First grade, I was punished for speaking in English. I only spoke Spanish. So I had to deal with it. I had to figure out what to do, which is what we all have done in our lives. And second grade, it was kind of a brutal grade. Second grade was a brutal grade. One of those brutal grades. So that was a brutal grade. And I'm glad it happened early. You got to get it out of the way. Get those brutal grades out of the way. And then third grade, I was kind of wondering what to do. You know, we had a Lowell Elementary School, San Diego, green barracks. It was like an army barracks before, or a military barracks, or just a plain old ordinary cool barracks. And there I was. I had gone to the wrong school. I had stayed in Burbank Elementary, but we had moved, and one of the professors drove me to Lowell. And I went into third grade, and it was Mrs. Sampson who was the one who said, "Juan, John, can you come up in front of the class and sing a song?" Wow, man. I said, Miguel, what did she say? What did she say? Get up there and sing a song. Come on, sing a song, Juan, sing a song. Okay, Mrs. Sampson, okay. And what are you going to sing? Oh, I'm going to sing Three Blind Mice. So I sang Three Blind Mice, and then she said to me, "You have a beautiful voice." And I asked one of my friends, ¿Qué dijo? ¿Qué dijo? Que tú tienes una voz muy beautiful. And from then on, from that third grade day, from there on, the whole note, I had to figure out what that meant, and I had to figure out what it meant in my life. And when I began to figure it out, I began to express myself, I began to sing, and then I began to say that to my students and to my family and to the people that I meet. And I want to say that to you tonight. You have a beautiful voice. And Mrs. Sampson, who's right here, let's give her a hand. And her family's right here too. Her family's right here too. So, thank you so much, Mrs. Sampson. Thank you so much. It was your words that made it all happen for me. That's all it took was 5 words. And by the end of the year, I was singing a solo in front of the whole school. That's Mrs. Sampson. That's Mrs. Sampson. And she's still encourages everybody. And we were talking about this on the phone. I said, I remember Dana Jones. She was so smart. She was the president of the class. And she said, you were smart too. I said, there you go again, Mrs. Sampson. And that's a real teacher. That's a real teacher. That's right. A maker of teachers. So let's begin in 1970. Let's begin in that great moment, right after the fever and the fire of the civil rights. Let's begin right there. And let's begin with what we all were doing back there. We were all reaching for our culture. We were all celebrating who we were. We were all looking for ourselves. And we were so excited about the civil rights movement. And we were making it continue. And one of the ways we did that was to write poetry. And one of the ways we did that was to put all our languages and styles and voices into that poetry. And here's perhaps one of the first poems I wrote, and it's called Let Us Gather in a Flourishing Way. Let us gather in a flourishing way, with sun, luz, grain, sunlight abriendo, opening the songs, los cantos que cargamos cada día, that we carry every day, and el young pasto on those young green glass braids and blades, nuestro cuerpo, para regalar, to give, perlas, pearls of corn flowing, árboles de vida, trees of life in the four corners, las cuatro esquinas. Let us gather in a flourishing way, contentos, filled with happiness, filled with strength, to vida, llenos de fuerza, giving nacimientos, birth and rebirth, to fragrant rios, to fragrant rivers, dulces, sweet, frescos, fresh, verdes, turquoise, strong. Carne de nuestros hijos, de nuestras hijas, rainbows. Let us gather in a flourishing way, en la luz and the light of our flesh, of our heart, to toil in peace, tranquilos in fields of blossoms, juntos to stretch los brazos, together, tranquilos, in peace, with the rain in the morning, temprana estrella on our forehead, that star on our forehead, that early daybreak star, cielo, sky of heat, de calor, and wisdom to meet us, where we toil, siempre, always, in the garden of our struggle and joy. Let us offer our hearts, a saludar, our águila rising freedom, to greet it, to celebrate, a celebrar, woven, brazos, branches, ramas, piedras, nopales, stones and cactus and feathers and plumas, piercing and bursting figs and aguacates and avocados and ripe mariposa, butterfly fields and mares claros and clear oceans and streams of our face, to breathe, todos, all of us, en el camino, on the road, on the path, blessing, seeds, to give, to grow, Maiztlán, that vision, that land, that our land, en las manos, in the hands de nuestro amor. And you know how we did it, how I did it? I just had that phrase, let us gather in a flourishing way. And sometimes the phrase has so much in it, and that's such a pretty word, flourishing. And let us gather sounds so good too, in a flourishing way, a way of life. So if you want to write that poem yourself, that's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. My son Robert says, "Come on now, you got to read how you're doing that New American thing." I said, Robert, I just don't recite that poem anymore. And then Rob, the two Roberts, Rob said, "You got to do that poem, Juan Felipe." Oh, I said, "Oh, come on, Rob." I said, "Okay." This is perhaps this is from the late 1970s. The Let Us Gather in a Flourishing Way was 1970. So this is around 9 years later, and I kind of wanted to do something different. And this came to my mind, and it was kind of a very spoken style, and I do this a lot with my great friend Felix Contreras, who's here tonight, and we kind of kicked off a band called Troca, Big Truck, and with percussion and rhythm and congas and timbales and anything you can put together with seeds and gourds around it. It's called, Are You Doing That New American Thing? As a matter of fact, I was coming in, and before I came in, I was putting on my coat, and somebody says, wait a minute, Juan Felipe, I got to ask you, are you doing that new American thing? Are you doing that new American thing, sweet thing, handsome thing? You know that thing about coming out, all the way out, about telling her, telling him, telling us, telling them that we must kill the revolutionary soul because it was a magical thing, a momentary thing, a civil rights thing, a thing outside of time, a 60s thing, a sacred thing, a brown beret thing, a grassroots thing, a loud thing, a spontaneous thing, a Vietnam thing, a white radical thing, an Aslan sacred homeland thing, a Cholo Pachuco Zoot Suit thing, a nationalist thing, a Pocho thing, a college thing, a August 29, 1970 thing, an outdated thing, a primitive thing, sweet thing, handsome thing, that thing about coming out, all the way out on a communist scare thing, a red thing, a let's go back to war thing because we must stop El Salvador thing because it could lead to another Nicaragua thing because we need Reagan and order in the Americas thing. You know that American thing, the chains, pins, and leather thing, the aluminum thing, the plastic underwear thing, the lonely boulevard thing, the hopeless existentialist thing. I just finished reading a chapter of Jean-Paul Sartre. A neo-Paris melancholy thing, a nightmare thing, an urban artist thing, a laughing thing, a serious suicide thing, a new American Chicano thing, the end of the world thing, a victim thing, por favor, enlightened quasi-political thing, a university hustle for the pastel, that apple pie, that cranberry pie, that whatever kind of pie it is thing. Wow, the community thing, we are the, you know what I mean, the we are, you know what I mean, the we are the, you know what I mean, the community thing. Are you doing that new American thing? Let's see, in Spanish, how would it go? The nacimos para morir thing, the yo te protejo, I'll take care of you, Sandra, I'll take care of you thing, the Dios y hombre thing, the ¿quién sabe? Juan Felipe, what's going on? ¿Quién sabe? Something's happening in the world. Pues ¿quién sabe? You got to stand up and speak about what's really going on. Pues ¿quién sabe? Are you doing the ¿quién sabe thing? The así nomás, the cool thing. Hey, what's going on? Así nomás. You got to get up and, be active, Juan. Así nomás. La vida es un misterio. Are you doing the vida es un misterio thing? Like, quisiera ser, I wish I could be, one day I'm going to be, because, I could be. Are you doing that particular thing? The vato firme, the really cool, really super, the really super, super extra triple plus iPhone 7 thing. Are you doing the new American thing? And you could hear the timbales. Are you in the be clean, be seen, be clean, be seen by the right people thing? Are you doing the be macho again because women like it anyway thing? Are you doing the look out for number one because, really, you tried the group thing, of course, right? Are you doing the be submissive again because, after all, a woman needs a man thing? I don't think, you know what I mean? Come on. Are you doing the army thing because it really pays more than hanging around the barrio thing? Wow, come on. Are you doing the women's draft thing because you can do it better than the man thing? Come on, you got to say something here. What was that? Come on, give me help. See what I mean? Are you doing the purity thing because no one got to be president by eating greasy tacos thing? Are you doing the spa thing because there you will meet the right tall and dark and blonde and tender thing? Come on. Are you doing the homophobic thing because you caught yourself lusting at an aberration thing? Yeah, I know. Yeah. Are you doing the new American thing, sweet thing, handsome thing? You know that thing about coming out all the way out? Everybody say, about telling her? About telling him? About telling us? About telling them that we must kill the revolutionary soul? Wow, you need a big mountain for that one. Ooh, I'm telling you. Spoken Word, 1979. That's the piece that I wrote back then, and then we started doing it with percussion, with congas, and it kind of turns into another kind of poem. I want to put this in this little bank deposit section right there. I think we lost a page, but that's the way things go a little bit. That's the way things go. Wow, it was a nice one. That's one good thing about being a poet is you can go with the flow, you know? Go with the flow. This is called Exiles. It's after around 1982, and I wanted to. We had, we had so many things going on in the United States and the world, and a lot of people were being displaced, and many more than before, perhaps because of the revolutions taking place and the great turmoil in Central America and throughout the world. And so I thought about the notion of being an exile. I thought about the notion of being an exile, and about being an exile also in our own land in many ways, of not having a place, of not having a territory, of not having a space. So I didn't know I wanted to deal with that. This is called Exiles. At the Greyhound bus stations, at airports, at silent wharfs, the bodies exit the crafts. Women, men, children, cast out from the new paradise. They're not there in the homeland in Argentina, not there in Santiago, Chile, never there in Montevideo, Uruguay, and they are not here in America. They are in exile, a slow scream across a yellow bridge, the jaws stretched, widening, the eyes multiplied into blood orbits torn, whirling, spilling between two slopes, the sea, black, swallowing all prayers, shadeless, only tall, faceless figures of pain flutter across the bridge. They pace in charred suits, and the hands lift, point and ache and fly at sunset as cold, dark birds. They will hover over the dead ones, a family shattered by military, buried by hunger, asleep now, with the eyes burning, echoes calling. Joaquin, Maria, Andrea, Joaquin, Joaquin, Andrea, and Exilio. From here we see them. We the ones from here, not there or across, only here, without the bridge, without the arms as blue liquid quenching the secret thirst of unmarked graves, without our flesh, journeying refuge or pilgrimage, not passengers on imaginary ships, sailing between reef and sky, we that die here. Awake on Harrison Street, on Excelsior Avenue, clutching the tenderness of chrome radios, whispering to the saints in supermarkets, motionless in the chasms of playgrounds, searching at 9 a.m. from our third-floor cells, bowing mute, shoving the curtains with trembling, speckled brown hands. Alone we look out to the wires, the summer, to the newspapers wound in knots as matches for tenements. We look out from our miniature vestibules, peering out from our old clothes, the father's well-sewn plaid shirt pocket, an old woman's oversized wool sweater, peering out from the makeshift kitchen. We peer out to the streets, to the parades. We, the ones from here, not there or across, from here, only here. Where is our exile? Who has taken it? This piece is called Quintino. I had written bilingual poetry. I had written this particular manuscript, Exiles of Desire, in English. And I had worked with that phenomenon of exile and desire. And I thought it was time to write in Spanish. So I wrote a book called Acrylic. And having spoken with my good friends and poets and the university and just bumming around North Beach and hanging out in San Francisco, when we first got to San Francisco in 1978, we stood really tall and we said, you know what, we're going to conquer the poetry scene. And it was beautiful because we didn't conquer anything, but that really was cool because that means we kind of just made a lot of friends. So we made a lot of friends. Jack Hirschman, the poets from the Castro District, from North Beach, from South of Market, from the Mission District, from all over the Bay Area, San Jose, East Bay, and of course all our friends of all our friends. So the whole notion in Spanish, you can blend and burst tenses, and as Juan Diaz was saying in today's corrido workshop, you can interconnect sounds with words. This is called Quintino. I'm going to do it in English. I'm going to do it in English. I'm writing you on this ocean table a paragraph. Between the sand tablets, a pilgrimage of eyes. From the chasm to the voice, here outside, when someone screams, the branches moisten with gray lips and veils. Words fly up from the thunder, slave salt, beams of shoulders and bellies like startled gulls, bellies of prisoner, thunder, slave salt. It's Friday, Quintino. Your 18 years beat in the cell like little boy fists. Here, too, there is an iron tuberculosis, the spider smile, daggers springing from the nipples of the administrators, secretaries, naked in a chain-link shorthand. It's Friday. When the old men are rocking in big dark armchairs and now and then look at their trembling hands, the jawbones groaning in the pasture, and then your eyebrows remembered, and your guitar fists that used to play sun and moon. When we asked only for earth, we're in June, somewhere between the 1st and the 30th. Quintino, an infinite pedal between two imaginary padlocks. Quintino, and the assemblage of an M16 stuck in Somoza's face. 45 years of smoke and blood exploded in the street. What changes, Quintino? Yesterday, your father died under the insecure hospital makeup. Today, I walk the streets. I look for eyes and look for them. I look when it's lighter, but the people get used to the eternal bars between the rise and summer. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I mentioned corrido. I'd like to bring Juan Diaz, our corrido master, that gave a beautiful corrido Mexican ballad workshop today, to the stage. And the ballad is a beautiful ballad. Pásale. And we're going to do this together. It's Juan's mastery and great knowledge of the corrido. He studied all his life. And the beautiful, amazing workshop he gave this afternoon that created the ballad he's going to present and sing, and I'm going to translate. Yes.
Well, thank you for inviting me to this great night for you, and I'm very happy for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Juan.
This afternoon, we wrote a tragic ballad. We went around the room and asked for different ideas. In the room, the consensus was that we would do a corrido about what happened to Sandra Bland. I need to plug it. Yes. Voy a cantar un corrido de una mujer que murió. Sandra Bland se llamaba, dicen que se suicidó.
I'm going to sing a ballad about a woman who died. Her name was Sandra Bland. They say she committed suicide.
El día 10 de julio en Texas, ¿qué sucedió? Por no señalar la vuelta a la cárcel la llevó.
It was the 10th of July in Texas. The police arrested her just because she didn't blink the lights right and took her to jail.
Era una negra valiente, sus derechos conocía. Era una gran activista, desafió a la policía.
She was a brave African American. She knew her rights. She was a great activist, and she stood up against the police.
Brian era hombre soberbio, un oficial prepotente. De Sandra Bland abusó, ahora lo sabe la gente.
Brian was a mean man. He thought too much of himself, and he abused Sandra Bland, and now everybody knows.
Sandra sabía los peligros de la discriminación. Decía que Black Lives Matter, esa fue su perdición.
Sandra knew about all the dangers of discrimination. She shouted out, "Black Lives Matter," and that was her doom.
Cuando Brian dijo a Sandra que su cigarro apagara, ella le dijo que no, porque en su derecho estaba.
When Brian told Sandra, "Put out that cigarette," she said, "No, sir, I know my rights."
Brian, bastante molesto, de su carro la sacó. Con violencia y empujones a la fuerza la arrestó.
Brian was so upset he just yanked her out of the car, and with violence and with pushes, by force he arrested her.
Estuvo presa 3 días, no supo lo que pasó. Con una bolsa de nylon dicen que sola se ahorcó.
She was in jail for 3 days. No one knew what happened to her. With a plastic bag, they say she committed suicide.
Tengan presente, señores, la violencia seguirá. Aunque se grabe en video, eso no te salvará.
Please, everybody, you know, violence is going to continue. Think about it. Even though you have a video, it may not save you.
Vuela, vuela, palomita, this isn't our last stand. Aquí se acaban los versos de la grande Sandra Bland.
Fly, fly, little dove, this isn't our last stand. Right here, the verse ends of that great Sandra Bland. Beautiful. And you know, the whole class, he led the class in such a way that everybody put up the themes they wanted to talk about, the issues they wanted to talk about on the wall, on paper, and they chose the story and the tragedy of Sandra Bland, and then they started working with the meter, with the lines, with the verses, with the rhyming pattern, with the changes in tone and tragedy, all in one workshop. I grew up with corridos. My mother sang corridos when I was a tiny little kid and child. And the first corridos were about the borderlands and the issue of being legal or not being legal, issues of migration and immigration. And that's how I grew up with this sound and those rhymes and that feeling, that beautiful feeling of people talking about the people, about our experiences, and in this beautiful form called el corrido, the ballad. And I'm so happy that we have Juan Diaz and the beautiful workshop here at the Library of Congress. This is a poem called Blood on the Wheel, and it opens up with a phrase from a gospel song. It's called, which is, Ezekiel saw the wheel way up in the middle of the air. And it begins like this, blood on the wheel. Blood on the night-soiled man en route to the country prison. Blood on the sullen chair, the one that holds you with its pleasure. Blood inside the courts, the beauty watch, the eye of the guard. Blood on the slope of names and tattoos hidden. Blood on the virgin behind the veils. Behind in the moon angel's gold oracle hair. What blood is this? Is it the blood of the worker rat? Is it the blood of the clone governor, the city maid? Why does it course in S's and X's? Blood on the couch, made for viewing automobiles and face cream. Blood on the pin, this one going through you without any pain. Blood on the screen, the green torso, queen of slavering hearts. Blood on the grandmother's wish, her tawdry stick of Texas. Blood on the daughter's breast who sews roses. Blood on the father who does not remember anyone bluish. Blood from a kitchen fresco in thick amber strokes. Blood from the baby's right ear, from his ochre nose. What blood is this? Blood on the fender, in the sender's shoes, in his liquor sack. Blood on the street, call it Milagro Boulevard, Mercy Lanes number 9. Blood on the alien, in the alligator jacket, teen boy Juan. There is blood there, he says. Blood here too, down here, she says. Only blood, the blood mother sings. Blood-driving miniature American queen stamped into rage. Blood-driving rappers in Mercedes blackened and whitened in news. Blood-driving the snare-eyed professor. Blood-driving the championship husband bent in extreme unction. Blood of the orphan weasel in heat, the Calvinist father in wheat. Blood in the lettuce rebellion on the rise, the cannery workers' prize. Blood of the painted donkey forced into prostitute zebra. Blood of the Tijuana tourist finally awake and forced into pimp sleep again. It is blood time, Sir Terminator ways. It is blood time, Sir Simpson winks. It is blood time, Sir McVeigh ways. Her nuclear blood watch soaked, will it dry? His whitish blood ring smoked, will it foam? My groin blood leather roped, will it marry? My wife's peasant blood spoked, will it ride again? Blood in the tin, in the coffee bean, in the maquila oracion. Blood in the language, in the wise text of the market sausage. Blood in the border web, the penal colony shed in the bilingual yard. Crow blood blues perched on nothingness again. Fly over my field, yellow, green, and opal. Dog blood crawl and swish through my sheets. Who will eat this speckled corn? Who will be born on this Wednesday war bed? Blood in the acid theater again, in the box office smash hit. Blood in the Corvette tank, in the crack talk crank below. Blood boat, navy blood, glove, army, ventricle, marines in the cookie sex jar. Camouflage, rape, whalers, rumble and roam. Investigate my Mexican hoodlum blood. Tiny blood behind my Cuban ear, wine-colored and hushed. Tiny blood in the death row tool in the middle-aged corset. Tiny blood sampler, tiny blood. You hush up again, so tiny. Blood in the Groove Shopping Center, in the blue Appalachia River and Detroit harness spleen. Blood in the Groove Virus Machine, in the low ocean tide and Iowa soybean. Blood in the Groove Lynch Mob Orchestra, south of Herzegovina, south, I said. Blood marching for the Immigration Patrol, prized and arrogant. Blood spawning in the dawnbreak of African blood tribes, grimacing and multiple, I said. Blood on the macho hat, the one used for proper genuflections. Blood on the faithful knee, the one readied for erotic negation. Blood on the willing nerve terminal, the one open for suicide. Blood at the age of 17. Blood at the age of 1, dumped in Greyhound bus. Blood mute and autistic and cauterized and smuggled Mayan and burned in border smelter tar. Could this be yours? Could this item belong to you? Could this ticket be what you ordered? Could it? Blood on the wheel, blood on the reel. Bronze, dead, gold, and diamond deep. Blood, be fast. When I started reading the post-war Polish poets, I fell in love with them because they went through such incredible, unimaginable ordeals, the Holocaust. And for example, Tadeusz Rosewicz said, I don't want to ornamentalize my poetry. I don't want to make it pretty. I don't want to make it fancy. I don't want all those images flying over the place. I don't want that. That's not what happened here. So I'm going to tell you what it is and what it was. Wisława Szymborska, the Nobel Prize winner, has another way of writing, yet she's writing about similar things. And so this is after one of her poems. It's called We Are All Saying the Same Thing. And she speaks of Yeti, that snowman, that mythical, legendary, who knows, still there, snowman. Yeti, come down. The escape is over. The earthquake mixes the leaves into an erotic pattern. You slide down the precipice and spit. You chew on a Tibetan prayer wheel. This is our city. With the bridge in flames. Call it desire. This is our mountain. Hear its umber harness shiver. Call it time. And this old woman beating a bluish rag with her shredded hands, call her now. Call her with your honey-like voices. She is the sky you were after, that immeasurable breath in every one of us. We are all saying the same thing, Yeti. We lift our breast and speak of fire and then ice. We press into our little knotted wombs, wander about our ends, then our beginnings. And the time came when there I was at the Montalvo Arts Center in Saratoga, And it was wonderful. It was great, to be there, to have a whole month to write, and real cool houses. The roofs are like 45-degree angles, and light comes at you, and there are deer outside. I fed them carrots and enchiladas. They go, Juan Felipe, what you doing? We like apples, okay? Manzanas. Get it right, Juan Felipe. Apples, manzanas. So somehow I had taken a lot of art supplies, and I bought them in Fresno, a beautiful Allard's bookstore, art store, and I didn't know why I was buying them, but I knew why I was buying them. Japanese bamboo pans and black India ink and giant soft paper. That's enough to write a poem right there. That's enough to write a poem, because it gets you going. There's no way. I encourage you to get long, soft paper and black ink and Japanese bamboo pans, giant ones, and that is going to get you writing a poem. I'm telling you the truth. And then I began to think of the Sudan, and it was a project I had wanted to write about Darfur, and it had kind of been sizzling inside of me, and I said, that is an incredible, impossible incident. Massacre, paramilitary, children, villages, men and women, animals, everybody, burned and bombed, killed. How am I going to write about it? The best I can. But what voice? And I wrote in the voice of 3 ghost children, in the voice of the mother, the little sister, of the brother, of the friend with only one eye. I said, something's missing. I want to write from the point of view of the ant, the tiny little ant that sees the little things. And it's written in mud drawings. A poem is a mud drawing because the main character, Ibrahim, doesn't have any tools to write. So he gets mud, and he's being chased by the Janjaweed, the paramilitary. So he gets the mud when he can, and he writes us a message, and he goes to another mud wall, and he writes us a message, and those messages are the poems. And this is in the voice of the ant. A mud drawing number 7, the ant. and leg muscle and hand scab and eye sinew and dust in groin and sweat on nose and green on nose and red from nose and tongue crawl and bird beak and bird eye rot and bee head rot and thorn and back and half fly on back and wings float and hairs burn and tiny worm on baby head and worm again and lice on baby hand and green again and blue cloud on woman belly and blood on black. There's a lot of poems up here. Maybe I'm over here already. Maybe I read all those. Descending Taishan Mountain, a beautiful mountain in China. And it's good to be a poet and it's good to be human beings because we are each other. Descending Taishan Mountain. My brother, he is more than that. To the left, the face of an old woman, even though he is 12. And I follow him. We pass the shrines and rise through the green web, a bamboo carved with our names and an oil drum that hangs in the middle of our ark. This is what we carry, step by step, breath by breath. A towel, please, for my brother. He holds on to the cord between us, 4 others behind. Stare down, count. You can hear them on occasion, whimpering, damning, kick tiny stones from the mortar. My brother takes his last steps. Without seeing, his heart falling, his knees go up. This is what we do. Every hour, there is no return, only the uncertain mountain, the mountain. And we're going to play a recording. Since the 60s, especially in the 60s and 70s and 80s, I was carrying books all over the place. Some I read and some I didn't read, but it felt good to carry a book. When we first got to the university, we all carried these big empty briefcases, because we were from the barrio. When I stepped into university at UCLA, I had Chicano luggage. It was cardboard boxes with rope. That's what it was. It was cardboard boxes with rope. And one of the other books that I carried, we carried empty briefcases. And the book that I really carried around was Pablo Neruda's Residence on Earth. And he was so good. And of course, in the 70s, early 70s, we were part of that as young poets. We were part of what had happened in Chile, of the vicious and terrible coup and military slaughter of so many human beings. And Neruda was a writer for the people, Chileno, and also participated against fascism and fought against fascism. And the army, the Republican Army that he fought with, made a book for him out of their uniforms. And they mashed down their uniforms and turned it into paper, and they had the machinery, and they churned out Canto General as a great poetry collection, which we have here in the Hispanic Division. It's a beautiful book. That's how it was made, and that whole thing. And Pablo Neruda, we're going to play from a recording they recorded here from the heights of Machu Picchu.
Del aire al aire, con
Pablo Neruda. And our great librarian in the Hispanic division, Georgette Dorn, conducted those interviews, those readings, and she invited me to read recently. And more than anything else, she has created, along with the staff, an amazing collection of amazing poets, Latin American poets, and so many great materials. Gabriela Mistral, Octavio Paz, and Angel Maria Garibay, the great translator of the Nahuatl poetry of Nezahualcóyotl of the mid-1400s. From air to air like an empty net, dredging through streets in ambient atmosphere I came, lavish at autumn's coronation with the leaves, proffer of currency, and between spring and wheat ears, that which a boundless love caught in a gauntlet fall, grant us like a long-fingered moon. Days of live radiance in discordant bodies, steels converted to the silence of acid, nights disentangled to the ultimate flower, assaulted stamens of the nuptial land. Someone waiting for me among the violins, met with the world like a buried tower, sinking its spiral below the layered leaves, color of raucous sulfur, and lower yet in a vein of gold. Like a sword in a scabbard of meteors, I plunged a turbulent and tender hand to the most secret organs of the earth. Pablo Neruda. So that's the book you got to carry around. You got to carry around that book. That's going to do it for you. I guarantee it. People say, well, how do we write a poem? I said, carry a book. Carry Neruda's book. Just carry that book. Get soft paper, Japanese pens, ink, Neruda's book. That's it. I'll see you later. Come back with a poem. It will do that to you. But you got to read it to each other. You got to palsy-walsy around North Beach. You got to stay up late in Donut Land. It's a big donuts cafe on the Mission District on 20th and Mission. Donuts of all kinds, and you sit there and you can write and talk and read Neruda. That was 1981. Every day we get more illegal. Yet the peach tree still rises and falls with fruit, and without, birds eat it, the sparrows fight. Our desert burns with trash and drug. It also breeds and sprouts, vines and maguey. Laws pass, laws with scientific walls. Detention cells husband with the son, the wife, and the daughter who married a citizen. They stay behind, broken, slashed, unpowdered in the apartment, to deal out the day and the puzzles. Another law, then another. Mexican, Indian, spirit, exile, migration, sky. The grass is mowed, then blown by a machine. Sidewalks are empty, clean, and the red-shouldered hawk peers down from an abandoned wooden dome, an empty field. It is all in between the light. Every day this changes a little. Yesterday homeless and without papers, Alberto left for Denver, a Greyhound bus, he said, where they don't check you. Walking, working under the silver darkness. Walking, working with our mind, our life. It's hard, and that's a poem where I wanted to write and inspired by the Polish writers, post-war Polish writers. I just wanted to, as best as I could, put those words on paper without too much of my favorite kind of painting. And I've learned a lot from the Polish poets. This is called I am merely posing for a photograph. I am merely posing for a photograph. Remember, when the nomenclature stops, you tell him that, sirs, he was posing for my camera. That is all. Yes, that may just work. My eyes, clear, hazel, like my father's, gaze across the sea. My hands at my side, my legs spread apart in the wet sands, my pants crumpled, torn, withered, my shirt in rags, see-through in places, no buttons. What a luxury. Buttons. I laugh a little, my tongue slips and licks itself. Almost, I laugh, licks itself from side to side, the corners of my mouth. If only I could talk like I used to, giggle under the moonlight to myself, my arms destitute, shrunken, I hadn't noticed. After so many years, sifting through rubble stars, rubble toys, rubble crosses, after so many decades beseeching rubble breasts, pretend I came to swim. I am here by accident. Like you, my face to one side, listen to gray white bells of rubble. The list goes on, the bones, hearts, puffed intestines, stone genitalia, teeth. Again, I forget how to piece all this together. Scraps, so many scraps, and lines and holes. The white gray rubble light blinds me. Wait, I just thought, what if this is not visible? What if all this is not visible? Listen here closely. I'm speaking of the amber thighs, still spilling nectar on the dust fleece across Gaza, the mountains, the spliced wombs across Israel, Syria, the amber serums cut across all boundaries. They smell incense, bread, honey, the color of my mother's hands, her flesh. The shrapnel is the same color. The propellers churn. I gave this poem coming up a whole different beat. As a matter of fact, I put beats in it, but that's not really what it's about. You know, so much is going on, so much separation between us, between colors, between classes, just so much separation, so much violence because of that. This group, that group, this group, that group. Who's suffering more, who's suffering less? Who's right, who's wrong? This is called Almost Living, Almost Dying. For all the dead. And here my streets with ragged beats, and the beats are too beat to live, so the graves push out. With hands that cannot touch the makers of light, and the sun flames down through the roofs and the roots that slide to one side. And the whistling fires of the cops and the shops do what they gotta do, and your body's on the fence, and your ID's in the air, and the shots get fired, and the gas in the face, and the tanks on your blood, and the innocence all around, and the spilling, and the grilling, and the grinning, and the game of race no one wanted. And the same every day, so you fire and eat the smoke through the long bones and the short mace and the day, this last Swisher day that burns, that turns to love, and no one knows how it came or what it is or what it says or what it was or what for, from what gate. Is it open? Is it locked? Can you pull it back to your life? Filled with bitter juice and demon angel eyes, even though you pray. And pray, Mama says. You gotta sing, she says. You got wings, but from what sky, from where could they rise? What are the things, the no things called love? Can its power be fixed or grasped so the beats keep on blowing, keep on flying, and the moon tracks your bed where you're alone? Or maybe dead and the truth carves you and calls you back still alive. Cry, cry the candles by the last 4 trees still soaked. And Michael Brown read, offer Sulu read, offer Ramos read, Eric Garner read, whose last words were not words, they were just breath, asking for breath. They were just burning, like me, like we all are still burning. Can you hear me? Can you feel me? Swagging tall, driving low, and talking fine, and hollering for my corner crime, and frying against the wall, almost living, almost dying, almost living, almost dying. I was listening to a Buddhist podcast, and someone mentioned Buddhist television, or no, Buddhist movies. The Buddhist movies? I mean, I used to go to underground movies and watch Warhol and 69 and 66 and Stan Breckage and all the experimental 3-second films. You put peanut butter on them, let it dry, and show it on the 8mm reel. But I never saw Buddhist cinema. You know, I want to be in that theater. And I remember reading also Benjamin Perret, the great surrealist poet. And I remember Frank O'Hara's poem about being in the movies. And so I was being hit by all sides. I had nowhere to run. This is called Saturday Night at the Buddhist Cinema. And I had wanted to talk about animals being tortured, but it didn't come out this way. You know, you have an idea for a poem, then you write it. It does not happen, something else happens. Saturday Night at the Buddhist Cinema. There were elephants in cabaret dress, reddish and cadmium blue, and dolphins and undetermined incarnations. I felt as if I had interrupted the process. I mean, the organ player had not risen. Remember the Castro Theater off of Market? It was Visconti's, Rocco and his brothers, and the lights went out. Maybe during 1992, the Rodney King revolt. The dolphin was working this out somehow, tweeting, blinking his tiny, saucy eyes. I was in the third row as usual, in the middle, and there was a horse, torn, unbridled, immense and stoic, being pinned with a hideous medal by the war provost. It turned to us and waited for someone to take her home, and the cow was there in a Mexican Pancho Villa outfit, spraying everyone with snowflakes, and you should have seen us, and how we had realized the way, how we rubbed the blood off of our faces after the killings, and how we stuck it to the assassins huddled in a shabby corner. You should have seen the pig act. The real pig with a wig and flames and pinkish pajamas and a cigar, doing a fatty Arbuckle shtick. He even ordered 18 eggs, over easy, with 18 sides of sourdough, and cranberry sauce, sardines, and a side of pastrami. He was hanging off the window ledge, top story of the St. Francis, yodeling to a Gloria Swanson look-alike in a cashmere robe. I mean, it was hilarious. It was what we all dreamed of. Yes, that was it. It was what we all dreamed of. The chicken and kimono pirouetted with piquant harpsichord arpeggios, Sonata in E major by Domenico Scarlatti. The evil iris on the side of the cheeky makeup popped. That is when I fell out. Slid to the toilet, but there were no towels or stalls or water. It was some kind of trick, I said, and blew my nose into my sleeve, an Italian piece from Beverly Hills, 1966. Why was I there all of a sudden? For the short feature, everyone shouted, "Where's the tuna?" Everybody ready? We want the tuna. We want the tuna. What about the tuna? The organ rose from the stage. A song of Remy der Markvicher jittered the chandelier, sung by a scrubby, lanky tenor in a shredded vest. I had the same chrysanthemum eyes of exile. I had the same wet, braided locks in the black spot. We all danced with straw-stuffed violas. We lost ourselves. We regained some kind of tree strength that had been severed. The screen lit up with our faces. Huge hands reached out to us. We lit a tiny fire in the village. That is when my mother, Maria, danced an incredible, inappropriate polka at the center of the plaza. But how could that be? She died decades ago. I was expecting parables on the three treasures. I was running from the bombs. I was delirious for shelter. Outside, everything was on fire, and the gas man was after me. Imagine that. I mean, why me? I said, why me? But it was no use. So I ran in here. So I crouched under the seats next to a woman in an emeraldine, scaly dress. She was calm and stunning and strumming a pearl-edged 10-string Stella. "You're Ava Gardner," I said. "Where's the exit?" "This is the exit." Thank you. I want to thank Governor Brown. He made notes about this poem, and everybody has been talking about this poem. This will be published on the bullet trains in Shanghai, and I don't know why. We had a beautiful workshop with the students from Shanghai the other day. Beautiful. The State Department put it together. Amazing. It's called "Let Me Tell You What a Poem Brings." I also want to thank the California Arts Council, UC Riverside, Fresno State. Let me tell you what a poem brings. Before you go further, let me tell you what a poem brings. First, you must know the secret. There is no poem to speak of. It is a way to attain a life without boundaries. Yes, it is that easy. A poem. Imagine me telling you this. Instead of going day by day against the razors, the judgments, all the tick-tock bras, the leather jacket sizing you up, the fashion mall, for example. From the outside, you think you're being entertained. When you enter, things change. You get caught by surprise. Your mouth goes sour. You get thirsty. Your legs grow cold standing still in the middle of a storm. A poem, of course, is always open for business, except, as you can see, it isn't exactly business that pulls your spirit into the alarming waters. There you can bathe, you can play, you can even join in on the gossip, the mist, that is. The mist becomes central to your existence. Thank you. And this last piece is dedicated to my parents, to Mrs. Sampson, to all my children and family, to all those attempting to cross those borders, searching for food, hope, all those facing all the difficulties we have today in our barrios, in our communities, everywhere we look. It's called Imagine What You Could Do. If I picked chamomile flowers as a child in the windy fields and whispered to their fuzzy faces, if I let tadpoles swim across my hands in the wavy creek, if I jumped up high into my papa's army truck and left our village of farm workers and waved adios to my amiguitos, if I let the stars at night paint my blanket with milky light, with shapes of hungry birds while I slept outside, if I helped Mama feed the hopping chickens and catch the crazy turkey in the front yard of our new village, if I walked through the evening forest at the top of a mountain with a silvery bucket to fetch water from the next town, if I moved to the winding city of tall bending buildings and skipped to a new concrete school I had never seen, if I opened my classroom's wooden door not knowing how to read or speak in English, if I practiced spelling words in English by saying them in Spanish like pencil for pencil, if I collected gooey and sticky ink pens because I loved how the ink flowed like tiny rivers across soft paper, if I grabbed a handful of words I had never heard or sprinkled them over a paragraph so I could write a magnificent story, if I stood up in a school far away from where I lived and sang for the first time in front of class, if I started to write a poem on a skinny paper pad after school as I walked on the wide sidewalk and then finished it when I got home, if I picked up my honey-colored guitar and called out my poem day after day and turned it into a song, if I gathered many words and many more songs with both of my hands and let them fly over my mesa and turn them into a book of poems, if I stand up here in front of my familia and all of you on the high steps of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. and read out loud like this, imagine what you could do. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. Thank you, everybody. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much. Dr. Billington, thank you so much. Rob Casper, beautiful familia, Mrs. Sampson, everyone. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
When you are the Poet Laureate, the door is open for you. Thanks so much to all of you for being here, and thank you to Juan Felipe for an amazing reading, and to all the energy you already brought to the laureateship. I'm going to invite you upstairs to a reception and a book signing, but before I do that, I want to take just a quick moment to honor our fearless leader here at the Library of Congress, the Librarian of Congress, James H. Billington. The librarian is charged with appointing the Poet Laureate by an act of Congress, but his connection to poetry is so much more than ceremonial. I have never worked with someone as brilliant at so many subjects, who also happens to be one of our country's great poetry supporters. He is open to any and all of the art's voices and forms, appreciative of its demands and challenges, delighted by its rewards, and committed to the idea that writing and reading it matters to our lives. The librarian has been beyond generous to the office, supporting its growth and giving us the tools to ensure that our newest Poet Laureate can launch an ambitious first-year project, and you should look for it online in just a few days. I can only hope future librarians learn from his example and continue to inspire the staff as he has me. Please join me in another round of applause for Dr. James H. Billington, our 13th Librarian of Congress.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.